My name is Laura, and I was 8 when my parents divorced. It wasn't one of those dramatic splits you see in movies, no screaming matches, no broken plates, just two people quietly accepting that their love had run its course. Mom got custody of me, but Dad stayed involved in my life. He never missed a birthday or school event, and our weekend visits became something I looked forward to more than anything. Mom didn't stay single for long. Within a year, she married Tom, my stepfather. He was nice enough. Not trying too hard to be my new dad, but not distant either. We found our rhythm pretty quickly. I remember him asking me about school, helping me with my math homework, and actually listening when I talked about my friends or problems. Then came the babies. First Rose, when I was 10, and Claire 2 years after that. I still remember the day Mom brought Rose home from the hospital. She was this tiny, pink thing wrapped in a yellow blanket, and something in me just clicked. I was a big sister now. I had someone to protect, to guide, to love. When Claire came along 2 years later, I was already an expert big sister. But something was different this time. Maybe it was because Mom and Tom were more settled in their marriage, or maybe they were just tired, but they started parenting differently. Where Rose and I had rules and consequences, Claire seemed to live in a world without boundaries. I remember one particular incident when Claire was about 4. She'd taken Rose's favorite stuffed rabbit, a gift from our grandmother before she passed away, and decided to give it a bath in the toilet. Rose, 6 at the time, was devastated. "Mom," Rose had cried, holding the soaking wet rabbit. "Look what Claire did." "Claire, sweetie," Mom called out half-heartedly, "we don't put toys in the toilet, okay?" Claire just giggled and skipped away, already eyeing Rose's art supplies on the coffee table. No timeout, no real conversation about respecting other people's things. Just another day in our increasingly lopsided family dynamic. I started noticing more and more how differently Mom and Tom treated Claire compared to Rose and me. If I forgot to do my chores, I'd lose my phone privileges. If Rose talked back, she'd be grounded. But Claire? Claire could throw a full tantrum in the middle of a restaurant, and they'd end up buying her dessert to calm her down. "She's just sensitive," Mom would say. "She's the baby," Tom would add, as if that explained everything. By the time I turned 18, I couldn't wait to leave for college. Dad had promised to pay for my education if I maintained good grades, and I'd worked my butt off to make that happen. The day I got my acceptance letter to Riverside University, one of the most prestigious schools in the state, I felt like I could finally breathe. "Remember, Laura," Dad had said during one of our weekend lunches in my junior year, "keep up those grades, and there's a place for you at Mitchell Consulting after graduation. Real responsibility, real salary, not just some entry-level position." I practically lived in the library that year, juggling business courses and internships. The hard work paid off when I graduated with honors. True to his word, Dad brought me into his company as a junior executive. Within months, I had my own office and a salary that let me rent a nice apartment in the city. My new place wasn't far from Mom and Tom's house, so I tried to visit regularly. But each visit felt like stepping into an increasingly warped version of the home I'd grown up in. Claire, now 12, had evolved from a spoiled child into something far worse. I remember the day Rose called me, her voice shaking. "Laura, you won't believe what just happened." "What's wrong?" I asked, already dreading the answer. "You know how Mom and Tom said I could have your old room now that you've moved out?"
Yeah.
The plan had made sense. Rose's current room was tiny, practically a converted storage space. "Well," Claire found out and Rose's voice cracked. She threw this massive fit. Screaming about how it's not fair, how she deserves the bigger room because she's more stressed about school. I pinched the bridge of my nose. "Let me guess, Mom and Tom caved?" "They didn't even hesitate," Rose said bitterly. Claire was mid-tantrum, screaming about how it's the prettiest room and she needs more space for her things, and Mom just turns to me and says, "Rose, honey, maybe it would be better if Claire took that room. You know how sensitive she gets." I thought about my old room, the bay window where I used to read, the built-in bookshelf Dad had installed for my 13th birthday, the perfect afternoon light that made it feel like a sanctuary. Now it would be filled with Claire's demands and drama. During my next visit home, I saw how Claire had redecorated my old room. The bookshelves were crammed with expensive toys she'd wheedled out of our parents. The walls, once a peaceful blue, were now plastered with posters of whatever pop stars she was obsessing over that week. It felt like watching someone vandalize a memory. "Do you like what I've done with my room?" Claire asked smugly when she caught me looking. She emphasized the word my like she was marking her territory. "It's different," I managed to say diplomatically. "Mom says I can get it repainted next week," she announced. "The blue is so boring. I'm thinking hot pink. And I need new curtains too. These ones are too plain." I glanced at Mom, who was pretending to be very interested in her phone. "New paint and curtains?" I asked. "The ones there now are perfectly fine." Claire's face immediately scrunched up in that familiar pre-tantrum expression. "Mom already promised, right, Mom? You said I could make it perfect for me." "Of course, sweetie," Mom replied quickly. "We want you to be comfortable in your space." I caught Rose's eye across the room. She was sitting quietly in the corner, doing her homework, trying to make herself invisible, a skill she'd perfected over the years. My apartment became Rose's unofficial sanctuary. At first, it was just occasional weekend visits. She'd show up with her backpack, claiming she needed a quiet place to study. But soon, those visits became more frequent, and I started to understand why. One Friday evening, Rose appeared at my door with red eyes and messy hair. "Can I stay here tonight?" she asked, clutching her overnight bag. "Of course," I said, ushering her in. "What happened this time?" Rose collapsed onto my couch. "Claire took my new AirPods. Just grabbed them off my desk and walked away. When I went to get them back, she'd already scratched them all up. I made us both hot chocolate, our comfort drink since childhood." "She's 12, not 2, I muttered. "She knows exactly what she's doing." "Last week, she went through my closet while I was at school," Rose continued, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. "She took my favorite sweater, you know, the blue one Grandma gave me for Christmas. When I found it, it was wadded up on her floor, covered in nail polish." "What did Mom say about that?" "Same thing she always says. Sisters share clothes, Rose. Don't be selfish." Rose's voice cracked. "But when I tried to borrow Claire's new jacket last month, she threw such a fit that Mom grounded me for upsetting your sister." These stories became a regular part of our sisterly debriefings. Claire taking Rose's makeup without asking and returning it empty or ruined. Claire borrowing Rose's phone charger and never giving it back. Claire reading Rose's diary and sharing parts of it at the dinner table, leading to our parents scolding Rose for keeping secrets. One particularly bad Sunday, Rose called me in tears. Claire had thrown a massive tantrum because Rose wouldn't let her use her laptop to watch movies. "I have a term paper due tomorrow," Rose sobbed over the phone. But Claire started screaming that she needed it more because her tablet was dead. "Mom actually told me to give it to her, Laura. My laptop. For movies." "Pack a bag," I said. "You can finish your paper here." That night, as Rose typed away at my dining room table, I watched her looking more relaxed than I'd seen her in months. In my apartment, she didn't have to hide her things or constantly look over her shoulder. She didn't have to brace herself for the next tantrum or the next time our parents would take Claire's side. The unfairness of it all made my blood boil. Rose was such a good kid, straight A's, never caused trouble, always willing to help. Yet somehow, she was the one who had to tiptoe around our sister's feelings, sacrifice her belongings, and apologize for wanting basic respect for her boundaries. Time has a way of sneaking up on you, and Rose turned 18. Mom and Tom organized a small graduation party at their house, nothing fancy, just cake and punch with close family. I'd been planning my surprise for months. Working at Dad's company had put me in a position to help Rose in a way I'd always wished someone had helped me. Well, someone besides Dad, that is. I wanted to give Rose the same chance I'd had, the opportunity to focus on her studies without drowning in debt. The party was in full swing when I clinked my glass to get everyone's attention. Rose was sitting between Mom and Tom on the couch, still in her graduation gown, her honor cords draped around her neck. "I'd like to say something," I announced, my heart racing with excitement. Rose looked up at me curiously. "First of all, congratulations, Rose. You've worked incredibly hard, and your grades prove it." I took a deep breath. "And that's why I want to give you something special for graduation. I'm giving you $30,000. You can go to that public college you've been dreaming about. The one with the great psychology program." Rose burst into tears, launching herself off the couch to hug me. "I can't believe it," she sobbed into my shoulder. "I was so worried about how to pay for college. This changes everything. My dream is actually going to come true." Mom and Tom were beaming. "Laura, that's incredibly generous," Tom said, his voice thick with emotion. Mom was dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. But there was one person who wasn't celebrating. From her corner of the room, Claire glared at us, her face twisted into an expression of pure displeasure. She didn't even try to hide it, her arms crossed, her mouth set in a hard line. When Rose finally let go of me, Claire stormed out of the room, slamming her bedroom door hard enough to rattle the windows. Nobody mentioned Claire's reaction that day. The party continued, with Rose excitedly talking about her college plans while Claire sulked upstairs. 2 years flew by. Rose thrived in college, making the dean's list every semester. She'd call me regularly with updates about her classes, her new friends, and her plans for the future. I kept my visits home to a minimum, usually just holidays and the occasional Sunday dinner. Then came the invitation. Mom called one evening, her voice bright with excitement. "Claire's graduating next month, and we're throwing her a party. A big one, we've invited all the relatives, some family friends. You'll come, won't you?" "Of course," I said, though something in her tone made me uneasy. "Just text me the details." When I arrived at the house on the day of the party, I was surprised by the scale of it. This wasn't the modest celebration we'd had for Rose, this was an event. The house was decorated with balloons and streamers, catered food filled the dining room table, and what seemed like every relative we had was crammed into the living room. Aunt Susan from Florida, Uncle Mike from Chicago, cousins I hadn't seen in years, they were all there, mingling and chatting. The party was in full swing when Mom clinked her glass for attention. Everyone quieted down as she stood in the center of the living room, beaming at Claire, who sat in the place of honor on the couch. "I want to thank everyone for coming today to celebrate our youngest daughter's graduation," Mom began, her voice thick with emotion. "Claire, sweetheart, you've always been our special girl, our hope and our support." I smiled politely, sipping my drink, waiting for the typical proud parent speech to end. But then Mom turned to face me, and something in her expression made my blood run cold. "And I'm especially excited to announce," she continued, her eyes locked on mine, "that Claire's big sister Laura is giving her an incredible gift, $50,000 for her college tuition." The room erupted in applause. Aunt Susan wiped away tears. Uncle Mike shouted, "Bravo." Cousins whistled and cheered. I froze, my glass halfway to my mouth, my brain struggling to process what had just happened. The room seemed to spin around me as the implications sank in. They'd planned this. They'd gathered all these people, created this public moment, trying to back me into a corner where I couldn't say no. Claire was bouncing in her seat, crying tears of joy. Mom was still beaming. Tom was nodding approvingly. And all our relatives were looking at me with such admiration, such approval for something I'd never agreed to do. My shock lasted exactly 3 seconds before anger rushed in to replace it. I set my glass down with a sharp click and stepped forward. "I'd like to say something," I announced, my voice cutting through the celebration. The room quieted again, expectant faces turned toward me. Mom's smile started to falter. "First of all, congratulations, Claire, on your graduation. That's a real achievement and you should be proud." I took a deep breath, my heart pounding. However, I need to address Mom's announcement because, quite frankly, I'm confused. This is the first time I'm hearing about any college money. I never promised this gift, and I'm not planning to give it. The silence that followed was deafening. Claire burst into dramatic sobs, burying her face in her hands. Tom stood up, his expression thunderous. Around the room, relatives exchanged uncomfortable glances, murmuring to each other behind their hands. "You're acting like a selfish brat," Mom shouted, abandoning all pretense of dignity. "How could you ruin your sister's special day like this?" "I'm ruining it?" I shot back. "You're the one who just announced I was giving away $50,000 without ever asking me. You gave Rose money for college," Claire wailed from behind her hands. "That was my choice," I said firmly. "Not something someone else volunteered me for in front of an audience." Without another word, I turned and walked out. Behind me, I could hear Mom shouting, Claire sobbing louder, relatives murmuring in confusion. But I didn't stop. I got in my car and drove away, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. The harassment started the very next day. My phone buzzed constantly with angry messages from Mom. "How could you embarrass us like that? Your sister is crying herself to sleep. I can't believe how selfish you've become." I tried blocking her number, but then she started using Tom's phone. When I blocked that too, they showed up at my apartment. "Open this door right now, Laura," Mom's voice echoed through the hallway. "We need to talk about what you did." Against my better judgment, I let them in. Mom burst past me, her face flushed with anger. Tom followed, looking grim. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Mom demanded. "Claire's dreams are ruined because of you." I crossed my arms. "I didn't ruin anything. You're the ones who made promises with my money without asking me. You're being incredibly selective," Mom spat. "You helped Rose but won't help Claire. How is that fair?" "Fair?" I laughed bitterly. "You want to talk about fair? How is it fair to announce I'm giving away $50,000 without even asking me? But why won't you help her?" Mom's voice took on a whining tone. "She's your sister too." "It's my money," I said firmly. "I get to decide how to spend it. And frankly, you two didn't pay for my education or Rose's. You could have been saving for Claire's college this whole time." Tom stepped forward, his face red. "We did have money saved," he admitted. "We just assumed you'd handle Claire's education since you paid for Rose's." I stared at them in disbelief. "You assumed? Without asking me?" "Well," Mom shifted uncomfortably. We actually already spent the money we had saved." "On what?" "We bought a new car," she mumbled. The absurdity of it hit me like a slap. "You bought a car? With Claire's college fund? We thought you would cover it," Mom snapped defensively. "Then sell the car," I suggested. "Use that money for Claire's education. Or take out a loan if you have to." Mom's face hardened. "We're not selling anything. This is your responsibility, Laura. You're the one who needs to fix this. You can't play favorites with your sisters." "I'm not playing favorites," I shot back. "I made a choice to help Rose. That doesn't obligate me to do the same for Claire, especially not when you try to force my hand like this." "We're not leaving until you agree to help your sister," Mom declared, planting herself on my couch. I walked to my front door and held it open. "Yes, you are leaving. Now. And don't come back unless you're ready to apologize for what you did at that party." They left, but the messages continued. Every day it brought new accusations, new guilt trips, new demands. But I stood my ground. This wasn't about the money anymore, it was about respect, about boundaries, about the right to make my own choices without being manipulated. I was at work when my phone started buzzing nonstop with notifications. Aunt Susan had texted, "Have you seen your mother's Facebook post?" Then came messages from cousins, other relatives, even old family friends. My stomach dropped as I opened the app. There it was, Mom's post, already flooded with comments. I need to address something that's been weighing heavily on my heart. As many of you who attended Claire's graduation party remember, my eldest daughter Laura had promised to help with Claire's college education, just as she did for Rose. However, at the last moment, she cruelly changed her mind, humiliating Claire in front of everyone. My youngest daughter is now devastated, crying constantly and falling into depression. How could a sister be so heartless? Claire's dreams of college are shattered because of Laura's selfish decision to go back on her word. The comments were brutal. I can't believe Laura would do this to her own sister. So heartless and cruel. I was there, it was awful to witness. Playing favorites with siblings is disgusting. My hands were shaking as I read through them. The lies, the manipulation, the way she twisted everything to make me look like the villain, it was too much. Fine. If Mom wanted to play this game, I could play too. I opened my phone's gallery and started scrolling through screenshots I'd taken of Mom's messages. She used a new number to correspond with me. Then I created my own post. Since Mom has chosen to make this public, let me share the full story with receipts attached. I never promised anyone money for college. Here are Mom's own messages proving I knew nothing about this gift until she announced it at the party. I posted the screenshots one by one. Mom, you have to help Claire with college since you helped Rose. Me, I never agreed to this. Why are you saying I promised something I didn't? Mom, well, we assumed you would. We already spent Claire's college fund on our new car because we thought you'd handle it. And finally, the messages about the car. Mom, we spent the money because we knew you'd cover it. Me, you spent Claire's college fund on a car because you assumed I'd pay without asking me? Mom, you're being selfish. We needed that car. Within hours, the tide of comments shifted. Oh my God, this is horrible manipulation. They spent her college fund on a car? Laura, I'm so sorry we jumped to conclusions. Your mom trying to force you to give $50,000? That's insane. One by one, relatives reached out to apologize for their initial reactions. Even Uncle Mike, who'd been one of the angriest commenters on Mom's post, sent a message. I was wrong to judge without knowing the whole story. Your mother's behavior is inexcusable. The doorbell rang late one evening, about a week after the social media showdown. When I opened the door, I found Rose standing there with 2 suitcases and a backpack, her eyes red from crying. I immediately pulled her into a hug and helped her bring her bags inside. Once we were settled on the couch with hot chocolate, she told me everything. Mom's gone completely off the deep end, Rose said, staring into her mug. After your post, she was furious. She started demanding that everyone in the family pick sides. When I refused to stop talking to you, she threatened to kick me out. She what? I felt my blood pressure rising again. She said I had to choose, either cut you off completely or leave. Rose's voice cracked. So I packed my bags and left before she could kick me out. You can stay here as long as you need, I told her firmly. I have that spare room, and you don't need to worry about anything. Rose shook her head. I appreciate that, Laura, I really do. But I want to find a job and get my own place. I'll stay for a little while if that's okay, but I need to stand on my own feet. I looked at my sister, really looked at her, and felt such pride well up in my chest. Here was this amazing young woman who, despite growing up in the same household as Claire, had turned out so differently. While Claire demanded and expected everything to be handed to her, Rose wanted to make her own way. You know, I said, this right here is exactly why I helped you with college and not Claire. You've never expected anything from anyone. You work hard, you take responsibility for yourself, you don't demand things from others. Rose managed a small smile. Claire's favorite word has always been to give. Mine is earn. True to her word, Rose found a part-time job within 3 months. She worked hard, saved her money, and eventually moved in with a college friend who needed a roommate. I helped her move her things into her new place, feeling like a proud parent watching their child take flight. Life settled into a new pattern after that. I cut off all contact with Mom, Tom, and Claire. The relatives, understanding the situation now, carefully managed family events to avoid putting us in the same room. It was sad, in a way, but also peaceful. No more drama, no more manipulation, no more demands. I still saw Dad regularly, our Sunday lunches remained sacred. And Rose, well, Rose and I grew closer than ever. We had dinner together at least once a week, sharing stories, supporting each other, building the kind of sister relationship I'd always hoped to have. Sometimes I wonder if things could have been different if Mom and Tom had parented Claire differently, if they hadn't spoiled her so completely. But then I look at Rose, who grew up in the same household but chose a different path, and I realize that at some point, we all become responsible for our own choices. I don't regret helping Rose with college. I don't regret refusing to help Claire. And I definitely don't regret standing my ground when Mom tried to manipulate me. Because in the end, it's not about the money, it's about character. And while money can buy a lot of things, it can't buy that.